launched a, got it. We launched a level 2 EV charging grant last July for businesses in our community. Started with $75,000, and we've been targeting businesses in our community that are just trying to add EV charging, either for their employees or for the broader public. And the criteria that we were grading these businesses on were really just high potential for public use. We wanted people to be using them and for them to be spatially spread out throughout the city. We don't want all our chargers concentrated in one area of the city. We've been doing 3-month cycles for these applicants, and we're awarding 50% of the cost of the chargers, up to $5,000 per charger plug. So far, we've been pretty successful. We've awarded 3 EV charging grants throughout the city. Best Western Mary Manor Inn on Main Street, and then a couple commercial properties in the main mall area, one on Gorham Road where Restore Wellness will be going in soon. It's under construction. And then a multi-tenant property on Atlantic Place. We have enough funds for 1 to 2 more projects, and the next closing date is the end of the month here, June 30th. So if you have any small businesses, or South Portland based businesses that are interested in adding EV charging, it's really a great startup program for getting chargers for cheap, and yeah, it's been great. We are also building an ordinance right now that will require developers in certain scenarios to add EV charging or some form of EV charging readiness to their developments. And we've targeted the sort of development process because when a developer is either ripping up a parking lot or building a new building, they are already underground, and it's the perfect time to add things like conduit and run electricity lines and things like that. And so, I mean, I won't get into the gritty details, but it's pretty much new construction of single family homes, duplexes, triplexes, and then new or reconstructed parking lots in pretty much all other uses. And the requirements are more aggressive for homes because that's really the primary place where people charge. And it's also slightly more aggressive in workplace settings. So for employee parking, because the second most popular place for people to charge is at their work. And the reason for that is because people are spending more time in those places, and it's a convenient time to plug in overnight or throughout the workday, and utilize level 2 charging. We're also looking at the requirement is 3 sort of stages of EV readiness. The first one is EV capable. The second one is EV ready, and then the third is EV installed. EV capable is where we're just adding conduit running under the parking lot or the whatever's there, the asphalt, and adding panel capacity that allows for a certain number of chargers to be at the site. EV ready then adds a dedicated branch circuit that runs through the conduit from the panel and terminates at the parking space. And then EV installed is actually installing an EV charger at the space. So slowly but surely, developments will have to comply as they're reconstructing parking lots or building new developments, and you'll start to see more chargers being added around the city because of that requirement. We are also working on a contract with a company to help us build out our own network of chargers at city-owned properties throughout the city. These will be networked chargers, so paid-for chargers, similar to a program Troy will talk about that he's already launched in his city. But we are going to be looking at pretty much any city-owned property They tend to be schools or parks, but places like City Hall and Community Center, these are places that are easy for us to sort of get things done because we own them. And we'll be working with this company to find and take advantage of federal incentives and other grant programs, and they'll be helping us write those those grants, and hopefully bring a couple dozen chargers to our city. In general, we have 10 city-owned chargers right now. They're all free for now. They're sort of dumber chargers that you don't have to pay for, that we don't have a ton of data about either, which makes it difficult. But it's been early days, and we've sort of had it be a perk for being an early adopter of an electric vehicle. But over time, we'll phase those out and have paid for chargers. So we have 10 city-owned chargers and another 30 or so that private businesses own in the city. And the best place to go to find a comprehensive list of chargers is plugshare.com. You go in there, you just type in South Portland or Portland, and or wherever you are in the country, and you'll find all the chargers available, and what plug type they are, and that sort of thing. So I'll pass it over to you, Troy, to jump off that.
Cool, thanks, Cashel. So Cash mentioned, they're working on an ordinance to promote EV charging installations for new parking and new construction. So we have a similar program in Portland. Our system's a little bit different. So ours is through we have like a technical design review for a new project. So our city's the Portland Technical Design Manual for any projects that are going through site plan review for parking, either parking lots or parking structures are required to anything with more than anything with more than 10 units. 10 parking spots is required to install at least 10% of the spaces with installed level 2 chargers, and the rest of the parking structure or parking lot needs to be at least EV ready. So we want them to install conduit underground so they don't have to rip up the lot in the future, and also make sure that the electrical panel is expandable so they can add that charging capacity over time as the need increases. So that's a requirement that we have for new parking construction in Portland already. We also have a number of chargers. We were able to take advantage of some grant funding from Efficiency Maine a while ago, and we also had a little help from CMP and some help from the city budget. And so we have, about 15 network chargers. 8 of them are at the Portland Jetport. So if you drive to the Jetport, you're able to either park in the long-term parking and trickle charge with level 1s while you go on your vacation, or in short-term parking, there's a bunch of level 2s. But we also have chargers that the city owns and are networked in the downtown and in Payson Park. I was really impressed. I checked on Thursday morning, and all of our in-town chargers were all being used at once, which was very cool. But we're also, as Cash alluded to, have another program to really greatly expand our charging network. We've struck a deal with a company called EVgo. So we're going to be installing 8 parking stalls with DC fast charging capability and 44 level 2 chargers that those will be installed over the course. The first 12 level 2s and the fast chargers by contract need to be installed by next March, but I think we'll start seeing them sooner than that. So looks like the first 4 fast chargers are going to be at the parking lot at the corner of High Street and Spring Street, where we also have a bank of 4 level 2s. So that's going to be like the electric charging hub in downtown Portland for 4 level 2 chargers and 4 fast chargers, so people can really get going. There's going to be another bank of 4 fast charging stalls on Commercial Street. And then for the level 2s, we're really focusing on what we're calling neighborhood charging hubs. One of the things we kind of think is that in places where there are a lot of apartments or condos, people aren't going to be able to drive into their driveway and plug in overnight. They need to have a place that's preferably off a street where they can pull in charge up for several hours or overnight and then move on in the morning. So the first three neighborhood charging hubs are going to be at Deering Oaks Park, at the Reiki School parking lot and the East End Elementary parking lot. Those will all start with 4 level 2 charges at first. We may expand those. But then we're looking for other strategic locations around the city that have high densities of apartments. So, so we haven't identified the locations for the other 36 level 2s yet, but that's in progress. We appreciate the school departments being willing to share their parking lots with the neighborhoods, because the schools are pretty much centrally located next to a lot of where people live. So that's a great partnership. We're also been speaking with Portland Housing Authority. That might be an opportunity to add charging in neighborhoods that are sometimes underserved. So we're excited about that. But we were really pleased that EVgo was very responsive to what we had asked for, and they were really creative to help us meet our goals to deploy a network in an affordable manner. So we should probably, I'm hoping we can see that first bank of fast chargers, but before that, like sometime this fall. I'm really pushing EVgo to keep that moving so we can get that. I think that'll be really, really useful for a lot of folks. So that's kind of a nutshell what we're working on here. Do you want to introduce Molly there, Cashel?
Sure. Molly Siegal is the electric vehicle program manager. I actually don't have a spiel on Molly. I'm hoping she can introduce herself, but we're close colleagues, and she helps us out a lot with knowing about just about everything there is to know about electric vehicles and EV charging programs in our state and federally. So take it away, Molly.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cashel and Troy. Really great intro, and great to start off and hear about what the 2 cities are doing so far. Lots of great progress. So I'm going to share my screen because I have quite a few slides, and it's, there's a lot of information here, and knowing that this is more of a conversation, I definitely would like to prioritize that and make sure that I'm talking about things that are relevant to you folks. And so please feel free to ask questions as we go. I'm not sure if I can see the chat, but you can always chime in and interrupt me. So as Cashel said, I'm the program manager for electric vehicle programs. So I manage both the rebate program for EVs in the state, and then our expanding the availability of charging infrastructure and our educational initiatives, which I'm going to talk about. So trying to focus on charging here, but it's always important to start with why drive electric. And of course, right now, fuel costs are at the top of everybody's minds. So that's probably the #1 reason that folks express interest in electric vehicles. And right now it's even more pronounced. So we just ran these new numbers the other day, and with the higher fuel prices, and this is actually using a lower price than it is now, we estimate that folks could save, upwards of $1,200 a year on fueling costs alone by switching from a gas vehicle to a fully electric vehicle. So this is really important. It's driving a ton of interest in EVs right now. And of course, the supply is pretty low, but the interest is there. So always like to start off with the reasons why people drive electric. Of course, it's a fun driving experience, and there's an opportunity to greatly reduce CO2 emissions. You may have seen our website, and we have some new videos up there. I wanted to share one of these with you that's more focused on home charging. We also have videos on driving an EV, owning an EV, public charger installations, try to cover topics across the board. But I'm going to try to play this. If you can give me a shout if you're not hearing it or seeing it for some reason. Never know if it's going to work super well.
I'm not hearing it. I don't know if other people are.
Not hearing it.
No, I don't have any sound.
Let's see. Is there a setting to hit?
Plug it in at night, get up in the
There we go.
morning, charge right up, ready to go. Well, I read that more than 80% of EV charging is done at home. I'm sure it's really convenient and saves money. Do you need a permit to install the charger?
Yeah, the installer was really helpful. He explained that most of these EV chargers are subject to local electrical codes. In this municipality, you got to have a permit, but that's no problem. You go on the website, you fill out a form. I think he paid less than $50 for a fee, and we're good to go.
That's fantastic, Dad.
Yeah, and we got Tom, the electrician. You went to school with Tom, and he had a lot of good practical suggestions. He said, don't locate the charger near your hand tools and your bicycles or someplace where the cable's going to get wrapped up. He says, make sure to get it on your wall that's closest to your house. That's important because it's less expensive to do that wiring-wise. And he even explained to me that my system didn't need any modifications because the circuit breakers was all right up to code.
I'm glad you used an experienced electrician.
Yeah, I probably could have muddled through, but Tom's a real pro. His motto is red to red, black to black. We do it right or we come back. Now I'm going to set you over here.
You got the wall-mounted unit, right? So you hang the charging cable and connector when you're not using it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got the 25-foot cable, and heard from Tom I could have put it on the outside of the building or out at the end of the driveway, but, I like the idea of having it right inside where it's warm and dry.
Great. Well, I guess the only thing left is to have fun driving your EV.
Well, that's exactly what I'm going to do. See you later.
Okay, so that's Tim Sample doing his thing. We've got a whole other series of those videos where he goes through different elements of owning an electric vehicle and charging. So a lot of fun. Go and check it out. We also have a home charging guide, and this is available in print and online. We are distributing them through local dealerships. And if you ever have an event where you want to have a focus on EVs, you can request a whole stack of these if you call our call center, and they'll send you as many as you want. We've got tons of them, and we really want to get the word out to folks that installing a home charger is not too complicated, and you just have to, there's a few considerations that go into it, but pretty helpful information here. Other web resources, we have a charging station locator, those other videos I mentioned, some pages about electric vehicles and charging. There's a vehicle cost calculator, FAQs. So we try to be a one-stop shop for all that information. Any questions on the resources, videos that we have? All right. I want to talk a little bit about Maine's plans for EV charging now. I think many of you are probably familiar with what's been done in the past as far as grants for public chargers, but Efficiency Maine has been doing grants for fast charging and for level 2 charging since about 2018. And so we funded that first round of fast chargers, like the ones that you can find at the Kennebunk Service Plaza and at the Hannaford and North Windham and at the Gardner Service Plaza. That was sort of the first round. And we're slowly expanding northwards and eastwards in order to cover more of the state. Things are going to change a little bit in the next few years because there's quite a bit of federal funding coming in through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, as well as the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan that is specifically targeted towards public EV charging. So it's really exciting. There's going to be a ton of opportunities and really going to speed up, hopefully, the development of public charging in the state. So it turns out that today is, all right, hold on just a second. So this is the existing public charging infrastructure in the state. The red dots are fast chargers and the blue dots are level 2 chargers. So you can see there's pretty decent coverage and density in the southern and central part of the state. And of course, it's going to be important to fill that in more and then to expand into those more empty sections. All right, so the timing is good for this because the state of Maine has just released a draft of the charging infrastructure plan for public comment. It's actually the last day of public comment right now. So If you do want to go online and take a look at that, it's going to be a more detailed version of what I'm talking about today. And you can go in and view it on your own time and submit comments. I know that timing is a little bit tight, but if you do have thoughts afterwards, I'm also happy to take comments by email. We will have a chance to consider them, but this is the state's electric vehicle infrastructure plan. The Infrastructure Act included quite a bit of money for public chargers, specifically fast charging. And in order to receive that money, which is about $19 million for the state of Maine, we have to submit a public charging plan explaining how we're going to spend that money. And this plan has been developed by Efficiency Maine, as well as some other state agencies, including the DOT and the governor's office. And it identifies statewide goals and priorities for EV charger deployment within the next 5 years. And rather than just focusing on the infrastructure funds, we've also wrapped in those other sources of funds, which includes the MJRP, which is actually ARPA, American Rescue Plan money, the infrastructure formula funds, which is the 19 million, and there are also some discretionary grant funds within that Infrastructure Act, and some smaller other sources of money. This will be updated each year as plans evolve and the landscape of charging in the state evolves. So timing wise, it will be on the website, the Maine DOT's website, until probably the end of the day today. So you can go on there and you can actually download a PowerPoint version of the plan, I believe, so you can have that to look at. The target date is to submit it July 1st. That is tentative, subject to change. And then if approved, that should happen by September. We should be able to have the funds available sometime later this year. And please stop me if you have questions. So all in all, we've laid out what we think the revenues from these funds might be. The NECEC settlement was the Clean Energy Connect, which we have a little bit of that left over. $8 million from the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan, 18 million of NEVI, National EV Infrastructure Formula Funds. It was 19, but they took some admin off the top. And then the discretionary grants are obviously contingent on us submitting a successful grant request, but we've chosen to estimate around $10 million. That would be approximately Maine's fair share based on the population in the state. Yeah, William.
There you go. Molly, so how does this work with the cities of Portland and South Portland? Are they going to be beneficiaries for some of this funding, or are you talking about putting this at other areas? Are we in Portland and South Portland, are we getting ahead of ourselves, or how does that work? Thank you.
So cities and towns can apply for these discretionary funds on their own if they so choose. States can also apply. So we wanted to make sure that we have our bases covered by creating a plan that's going to include a large amount of discretionary funds for the state as a whole. And as you'll see later in this presentation, there are some priority areas that would potentially benefit Portland and South Portland. I don't think we've fully worked out, what exactly how that would be distributed and whether it also makes sense for the cities to apply on their own. That's going to be a separate conversation, but we wanted to make sure that, regardless of which cities and towns are planning to apply, that their needs are going to be covered in the state plan. But yeah, that's a great question. Cities and towns, I'm pretty sure any governmental entity is able to apply for those. Yeah, Scott?
Hi, I was wondering if there's money for funding maintenance of the chargers that you're going to install, because I know in my travels with my Tesla, I often find the Tesla superchargers are usually working, although you often see maintenance people there. But I know a lot of the other chargers, I either see or I hear stories of them not working, which can be a real problem when you're traveling.
Yeah, for fast chargers, there's going to be pretty strict standards relating to uptime and reliability. So for the grants that we've funded in the past, we require between 95 and 97% uptime per charger. And they just released the standards for federally funded projects yesterday, proposed a proposal for the standards, and I believe it was 97% uptime. So typically maintenance will be required it will be a part of the contract. And so whoever's operating and owning the station will build that into their cost estimates.
Thank you.
So, yeah. Okay. I'm gonna keep going, but please stop me.
Looks like Martin has a question.
Oh, great. Go ahead.
Oh, you're on mute, Martin. Oh, you're still on mute, Martin.
Okay,
There we go.
now, is that better?
Yes.
Okay, good. Specifically, I charge when it's operating. There's a single charger right in front of City Hall. The problem with that is, of course, one is that the availability varies. Typically, it's used except at off hours. The second problem is there's only a single charger, which I may have mentioned, and I don't know how that was decided. Was it because there wasn't enough parking, or not? Because I'm not aware of any other charging places that are limited to one charger.
Yeah, that's a good point, Martin. So that particular one does have one head, and partly because it's where it's located. It's there's limited parking in front of City Hall, but also like that type of like on-street parking, it's difficult to serve multiple vehicles at once. That's why we prefer like parking structures or pull-in parking, because you can do a double head unit much more effectively. But you're right, that one is I would bet that that's probably the busiest charger in Maine. It's like I look at the metrics when people are using it, like pretty much it's used like 75% of the time. So there's almost, like you point out, there's almost always somebody using it. But that's why we're looking at additional chargers nearby. So like I mentioned, we have the 4 chargers at the Spring High parking lot, and we'll be looking at some additional units as well, Martin. But that one definitely is it's kind of promotes charging too. It's very visible right in front of City Hall, and that was one of our points. But we are glad to see it being used as heavily as it was, and it was down for some repair for a while. We had some needed a part that it was back ordered. It took quite a while for us to get it. Like some components are tied up in supply chain issues too. But yeah, thanks for that question. It is fixed. Yep, it's up and running again, and people are back to using it.
Okay.
Okay, Jim Cohen, and then Michael Dixon, Lay, and Barry Woods are what I can see that have their hands up. So go ahead, Jim.
Thanks, Molly, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for the presentation. Molly, could you go back to the slide that showed the cost comparison? And while you're going there, I also wanted to just do a shout out to Troy. I was glad to see that the City Council approved an additional member of the Sustainability Office. That was a good thing.
Sorry, what cost comparison?
Yeah, it's back a little further. There was some fine print that had a comparison of rates as of, I think, June of 22.
Oh, of the fueling costs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. So there's obviously been a lot of inflation of fuel prices, and electric prices went up a lot, or the supply price went up a lot for this year, but that's a volatile price. And obviously oil prices have gone up a lot. Would you say that on balance, if you looked out a year or 2 years, that you'd expect electric and then gas prices to roughly kind of go up and down together because electric prices follow from gas prices, or at least related to that, as people are trying to figure out if it's cost effective to make the switch?
I do not have a crystal ball into fuel prices, unfortunately. But I do know that electrical prices are much less volatile than fuel prices because they are regulated. So yes, electric prices do go up from time to time, and they also go down, but nowhere near what we see with fuel prices. So it's very hard to contemplate a situation in which it would be more costly to charge an electric vehicle than to fuel a gas car. I mean, it would have to be a complete reversal of the patterns that we've seen for the past decade. So I think it's pretty much safe to say that if you're charging at home, most of the time, it's almost always going to be cheaper. And the more that difference grows, you know, the greater the magnitude of the change, the larger the difference is going to be. I think in the video, it mentioned that you could save $600 a year. We made those videos a year ago, and it's now $1,200 is the estimate using the same calculator. So yeah, lots of big changes, but we just don't expect to see the same volatility of electric prices that we do with gas prices, thankfully.
Well, and that's with the 5-month average of $3.93 per gallon.
Yeah, I know. If you went up to $5 a gallon, it would be through the roof. Okay, Michael.
Thank you. 3 questions, sort of in chronological order of the presentation, if I could. First is wondering if somebody could discuss the relative merits of the ordinance approach versus the technical design manual approach, and the actual impact of that standard of 1 in 10 versus whatever standard is being contemplated by South Portland. Secondly, wondering what provisions are being considered or implemented in terms of ensuring access to charging stations. I've seen charging stations blocked by dumpsters. I've seen non-electric cars parked at them. Just wondering if there's any kind of enforcement of those expectations. And related to that, sort of the accuracy of the maps. I've been to charging stations where, according to the map, there were, you know, two ports, but there's only one, for example, et cetera. And then finally, I'm wondering if there's any discussion at either the municipal or the state level of electrical charging of the largest vehicles that come to Maine, namely the cruise ships, which I recently learned generate a lot of emissions just idling in port. Thank you.
All right, take a stab at that cruise ship one first. There's something we've totally looked into, Michael, and there was some of the VW settlement money. Actually, one of the allowed uses was shore power, establishing shore power for marine vessels. But at this point, we need to have we need more electricity on the peninsula, particularly. Plugging in cruise ships can take as much as 10 to 15 megawatts, which is a lot. So that's something that we'll be having conversations with the utilities as they expand service to support electrification in Portland for sure. So
I can
go ahead. Go next, guys.
Molly, were you going to say something?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So the tech manual approach, as I understand it, tends to be easier for staff to get in and change without going through council. So as real world conditions change, staff can update the tech manual, whereas an ordinance tends to be a more drawn out process to change. We are taking a much longer time, more methodical approach. We commissioned a study from Revision to look at our ordinance update, and we're trying to make it just perfect off the bat. Of course, we can go back into it and change it, if things do change or it's not working for some reason. But we've had a pretty in-depth look at what we want to put into it, including developers forums with developers. So that's been our process. Troy might add more to his process, but their requirement is about 2 sentences. Ours is, pages and pages. So ours will be more specific and tailored to our city.
Well, in Cashel, it's just a bit of a different format we do more things through our ordinance and we don't have a technical manual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Portland's ordinance also just references the technical manual throughout and refers to it.
Yeah, that's because anything that goes through site plan review has to comply with the technical manual, and the planning board is the kind of body that oversees that. And our planning, our planning department was, very supportive of, starting to implement elements of One Climate Future. So they, once the plan passed, they were, they worked pretty quickly to get some requirements into the technical manual, which, and we're going to continue to look at those to make sure that they're what they should be. Maybe, there's opportunities to make some amendments going forward. So I think, we'll continue to take a look at that. And, again, it's somewhat more flexible than having to go through an ordinance development process, as long as it meets the standards of the city's comprehensive plan, and the planning board can make those changes.
And then to your second question about things blocking chargers, we are adding in our ordinance some language around that for who can be parking in chargers for actively charging cars versus not actively charging cars. We're also looking at, the length of the cord and ADA accessibility of chargers, and adding that all into our ordinance around EV chargers themselves.
Yeah, in Portland, we have a couple of measures. So for the city-owned chargers, we for people, we disincentivize people staying over longer than their car is being charged, because once your car is charged, you have a 10-minute grace period, and then it starts charging you 25 cents a minute until you unplug. That will hopefully encourage, I find that it's encouraged people to not linger, which is great. And in terms of non-EVs blocking it, luckily I haven't seen it as much as I was afraid of, but I've been working with our parking control division, and they're updating signs, and we'll enforce that, particularly as the network expands further, to make sure that other cars aren't blocking them. So, was there other questions, Michael? We covered the bases.
There's one question about the visibility of chargers and accuracy of the maps online. And I think the one thing I'll say about that is that the EV charging industry, specifically for networked chargers, is moving towards more standardization of data collection and data sharing. And so with the standards that we just saw released for the federal funds, there will be some new standard requirements for the data that is collected by the station, and also in real time. And so that includes the number of ports and the real-time availability of the station, and that it will be able to be displayed on multiple different network platforms. And so hopefully that will address some of the issues around inaccuracy. It will be more automatic and less manual, somebody observing and plugging it into PlugShare.
And that's the PlugShare, because it's crowdsourced, particularly for the non-network chargers. It really relies on the EV users themselves being accurate when they crowdsource the locations. So I'm glad to hear that the standards are going to be improved for the network chargers.
Thank you.
Okay, I see Lay has a hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad you're doing this presentation. We have one car, and it's a Volvo Recharge. We live downtown, and one of Troy, I think one of the reasons why that charger in front of City Hall is used so much, that means obviously very convenient location, but it's also free parking. We've gone over to the High in Spring, and really by the time you pay for parking and then pay for the charging, it's not such a great deal. It's getting up there, maybe even in some cases beyond gas, which leads me to my second point, which is that we've got to walk home from these places, and I'm wondering why there's so much more focus on level 2 than level 3, because it would be so much more convenient if you could park at a level 3 and then just, spend an hour doing some shopping or something or whatever, and then pick up your car and go home. But the level 2s take a really long time to charge. And we've gone into the Elm Street before, and the limit there is 3 hours. Well, that gets us about 30 miles, I think. So the level 2s are just really slow. And they're certainly better than nothing. And they're certainly better. I don't have a place I can plug in my condo. Fortunately, we're moving to Stevens Square where they will, but that's not going to be for another year and a half. But so it's a lot better than just plugging into your 120. But I just find the lack of level 3s a little frustrating. And if we're really trying to encourage people to use EVs, I think we need to make it as easy for them as possible. So anyway, that's more a complaint than it was a question.
Yeah, no, but that's right on track. I mean, we certainly agree with you. So in terms of the Spring and High Street, so the way it's set up currently, it charges the parking fee in addition to the electricity between 9 and 6 on Monday through Saturday. It doesn't charge the parking fee outside of those hours. So if you want to just charge and pay the 15 cents kilowatt hour, you can go in after 6 and you can stay until you're charged. But yeah, that's another reason why we're focusing on the neighborhood charging, so people can pull in and like maybe charge overnight and then walk home. And also why we're really trying to get those 8 DC fast chargers in the downtown for folks who need to charge up quickly, but also for people who are visiting Portland who want to be able to charge up while they have a meal or something. So all the above.
And that makes a lot of sense, Troy, except for if I walk up there at 6 o'clock and my car's not going to finish charging until 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning. That's going to be a little inconvenient too, because I assume I'm going to get charged after it's fully charged. So
yeah, so that's the way it's set up now. We may have to rethink that. So
I think what happens is that we end up doing a little bit here and a little bit there constantly, and it's just it's not convenient. I think if we could just build more level 3s, it would make a huge difference.
No, there'll definitely be more, but I think as someone like Barry might tell you, and they're very expensive. The infrastructure costs are high. So, but I think having 8 new ones in the downtown will make a huge improvement. So within a year, you'll have a lot more access.
Excellent, thank you.
Julie? Would you want to chime in on something? You had your hands up for a long time.
Nope, I'll go after Barry.
Thank you, guys. Julie, Cashel, Troy, really appreciate the leadership you guys are having in this area for both the cities. This is a question, actually, it's more directed towards Molly, and it counterbalances Lee's comment about level 2. And I certainly understand frustration if you don't have a home charger and live in a city. And it's definitely a tough nut to crack, and it's still something that cost-wise and otherwise has got to continue to have creativity. So Molly, I'm thinking about level 2s in specifically for tourism and destination type charging. And I'm wondering, and I haven't seen the most recent iteration of the state's plan for the federal funding, but I'm wondering if you have any knowledge regarding over the next 5-year plan, to what extent, if any, level 2 funding will be part of the overall approach, specifically for tourism and destination charging, once people are off of the main travel corridors and have used the DC fast charging network, because it's just an area that I know we get a lot of inquiry, and I think there's an appetite certainly, and any incentives in that area in particular, I think would be very helpful.
Yes, thank you, Barry. That is a focus of the state's plan. And if I get a couple slides further, I'm just skipping now because there's a lot of great questions. So I think we'll keep going with this. One of the priority categories in this plan is destination charging, and that's the 3rd category you see here. And if I can move there, this objective here is to install chargers at destinations that are either remote from major travel thoroughfares or are in other highly trafficked destinations. And you can see here that we've penciled out approximately 18 DC fast charge plugs and 500 level 2 plugs statewide. So that's quite a bit. That's larger than anything we've done so far. And these could be a good fit for tourist facing businesses, hospitality, hotels, restaurants, and also possibly some, maybe some in-town locations, downtowns, where people are going to be parking and staying for a couple hours at a time. So yes, that is a big focus. I think you'll likely see something in that area coming out later this year. We do have some of the ARPA funds available, or the MJRP funds that will be available soon, and we hope to be able to roll something out that will be likely more focused on the rural areas of the state that are lacking in charging infrastructure right now. We're really looking at northern Maine, down east Maine, but other areas are also going to be a priority. So the answer is yes.
Troy, as I understand it, you might have to jump off the call.
Yeah, so it's good. Thank you for reminding me. It's been such a great conversation. I lost track of time. So yeah, so thanks everyone for coming, and appreciate the conversation. And thanks again for Molly for that information. I'll definitely catch you all next time. Thanks.
Thanks, Troy.
Thanks, Troy.
So Molly, I have a question for you, but also for Barry, you as well, and other people that are on this coffee and climate. If I think I saw you go through and do your do something about level 1, level 2, level 3 way back. There was a chart and what your priorities might. Oh, nope. Forward.
Maybe.
Forward. This category.
Oh yes,
category.
These are the 3 different categories. Yeah.
Okay, so these are so my question for you and for other people on this call is that and it's as I've run across, we're about to roll out a South Portland Electrify Everything campaign that's going to be different from Portland's, but we certainly are going to provide rebates on top of Efficiency Maine rebates for the things that Efficiency Maine covers, like air source heat pumps, hot water heat pumps, EV chargers. We're actually going to add in electric lawn care equipment and e-bikes. And my question to you is, and I've brought it up to CMP briefly before, is that my house, and I know there's other people that live in my neighborhood on this meeting, my house is oddly has 100 amp service. And so I have heat pumps right now. I'd like to add another heat pump. I'd like to add a hot water heat pump, hot water heater, and EV charging. But it would cost me at least $10,000 to upgrade my service. And I think, and that's mostly, I think because we have underground lines, but for people that even don't have that, it would be sort of, at least $5,000, they need to upgrade their service to accommodate all of these things. And I know that CMP has, had a make ready program for public charging. And I'm just wondering if it's on, if anyone else has this issue, and if it's on Efficiency Maine's radar, that there's going to be a point where people simply can't electrify their homes or add more, add EV charging or something like that, because their service can't accommodate it. It wouldn't be a significant cost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's certainly on our radar. And yeah, I'm aware of the CMP proposal. I don't think that is going to be going forward in the near future, but things could change.
I don't think that's for homes either.
Right. Yeah. Their initial pilot was for public charging. So yeah, we're certainly aware of the issue, and if we could help financially, we would. But we do the vehicles and we do the public charging right now. So yeah, it's a very important concern. And when you look at electrifying the entire home, yeah, it's going to be a challenge for some folks.
Julie, just a quick question. That $10,000 figure, did that come from the utility?
No, it came from, it's not out of the ballpark of what I've heard before from another electrician, but it came from Revision.
Okay.
We had Revision come in and look at putting in a hot water, heat pump, hot water heater.
Yeah,
And,
it's underground power though.
it's underground power, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a huge issue. I'm glad you highlighted it. And I think if you look at the existing housing inventory, I'd be interested to know what the data says for 100 amp is. That was the default for residential service. I think it's much more common now to have 200 amp. But when you're talking about heat pumps, which can be used 24/7 depending on the weather situation, unlike electric vehicle charging, where you can charge it at night, typically off peak and without other loads that are competing. You combine all this stuff in terms of electrifying everything, and I think it's a significant issue. And I don't know off the top of my head of other utility make-ready programs with that residential focus, but it's not too soon to start thinking about it.
Yeah, and Barry, I am not sure how common 200 amp service is. I feel like it should be, but anyway, there's other folks that have their hand up as well.
Yeah, don't know. Good data to collect though, and CMP ought to have something about that.
Yeah. Bill?
Yeah, we've been sort of doing a lessons learned on our electrify everything on this side of the river. And I think that would be a good ordinance to put in for new construction, 200 amps. That's Julie and I share the same neighborhood here. And you might want to talk to somebody other than Revision for a domestic hot water heat pump, because they are not plumbers. So their cost might be higher in that regard. So the domestic hot water heat pumps generally put in by plumbers.
Well, this was just an initial consult, and we didn't even get to how much it would cost to put in the hot water heat pump, because
Well, William, I think on the hot water heating, the heat pump hot water heater side, I think we have plumbing folks.
Yeah. We went through the Electrify Everything Portland program. Erin?
Yeah.
Hi, thanks. Sorry, which Erin?
Yeah, go ahead.
And Erin has her hand up.
I just two quick comments. I work over at Texas Instruments in South Portland with Judith, and two comments. One is just a comment for planners, city planners. I just purchased, or am taking order soon of a electric truck, and have intentions of pulling a trailer with it. So I know that's not the highest priority for folks, but I'm thinking as tourists and people from Massachusetts or out of state want to pull a trailer and with an electric vehicle, pull through charging is something that I think should at least be at the thought of some of the siting for these different projects, because pulling in a trailer is basically prohibitive in most the spots you pull up to. And then I just had one other comment as we're exploring putting chargers in at our workplace here at Texas Instruments. I've had some conversations with Barry Woods on a similar project for my condo association, and the difference between a network charger cost versus just a dumb charger is significant and quite almost cost prohibitive, especially for smaller business. But at the same time, you want to recoup the money. I was curious. I know in the town of Falmouth they put some chargers up in the parking lots and have put a sign up saying, please donate money to the town or something like that. I'm curious how other municipalities have looked at that, just that huge upfront cost for the network chargers. We were thinking of maybe asking for donations to United Way or something like that. But have any other businesses or the town thought of how you would maybe recoup some costs? So that it doesn't seem like some people are getting preferential freebies on that. So thanks.
Yeah, that's a great question. And we're always in favor of finding solutions that don't involve necessarily installing expensive network chargers unless it's really crucial to your site. So again, it's site specific. If it's a hugely popular public area, it's really probably going to be best to go with networked equipment. If you have a parking lot that gets used maybe less frequently, more by a certain group of people, then the honor system can work. And we've seen, churches asking for a donation, having, I heard someone the other day talk about, they just have a sign with a QR code in their parking lot that you can scan and go and give a couple dollars to the church. So those solutions are out there. There are also, when you talk about condo associations, first of all, that's typically pretty much the most difficult use case for figuring out a charging solution. So it's a challenge and can be pretty frustrating, but there are some new, and there's a variety of solutions that are now available for those multifamily locations that involve, networking that's not exactly on the same lines as like a robust public charge point charger, but maybe more of like a networking that allows you to restrict access to certain users, use cards and charge people based on how much they're using. So there are solutions out there, and I think someone like Barry would probably be able to walk you through some of what's available, and we're also happy to talk and troubleshoot with you. But there are solutions that people are coming up with for those sorts of applications where you don't necessarily need the pedestal charger with the screen and the credit card reader.
Hey Molly, would you unshare your screen?
Yeah.
So boy, this has been a fantastic meeting.
Oh yeah, it's already time.
I think we didn't even get to half of Molly's presentation. So it definitely sounds like we have more to do on this topic. I do want to respect people's time, though it's 10 o'clock. I really want to say thank you to Molly. I also just want to add, Erin, to your question, and Cash will correct me if I'm wrong, but none of our ordinances specify that you have to have networked charging, or that you have to have, it's all like Molly says, it's all site specific. So there's a lot of flexibility in there. We just want to make sure to match it. I love the fact that the airport has level 1 in long-term charging, because that's absolutely appropriate. At the risk of going so far over, does anybody have any last comment or question before we leave for the morning?
I just want to say, if you're interested in seeing the rest of the slides that actually get into the specifics of the different priority categories, go to Maine DOT VPI. If you just Google Maine DOT VPI, that's the virtual public involvement website, and you can download the presentation of the plan today, because it will be gone after today.
Okay,
and I think there's a lot of shareable resources here. I think I'm going to send a follow-up email to everybody. So I'll have Molly send me the details there, and maybe the slide deck from today, and that sort of thing. So I'll get that to everybody that was signed up today.
Perfect. Thanks, Cashel. And it sounds like we might, usually we try not to cycle onto the same topic more than once a year, but we potentially will have a follow-up on this topic at some point. Thanks everybody for being here. Thanks, Molly. Thanks, Cashel, putting it together. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Enjoy your weekend.